hopefully the discussion will be vivid enough that if you close your eyes a little bit, you'll be able to visualize the stacks of gold bars we're talking about and so forth. So we're going to talk about unpublished Utah stories, and it won't be just Utah, but a majority of them will be Utah. This one really isn't my story, but we'll talk about it briefly. Anybody in here know what that is? Okay, so we got at least one person in here that knows what it is. Let me show you another picture, close-up of it. Okay. That, we'll go back to the first one here. Last summer before last, private property, central Utah. 2 men entered a cave on private property down there. There was 2 unusual stones inside the cave. One of the stones gave off light. They didn't dare touch it. They left it where it was. This is the other stone which they took out, which I've been able to handle and so forth. They've done electron microscope, a lot of electron microscope photographs, and they've taken little flakes of the different colors off to run testing on them to see if it's a fraud or if it's real, to see what the pigments are made up of. It's got human urine, it's got human blood, it's got all kinds of different things in these pigments. It is authentic back to 1600 BC, found in central Utah. They're trying to do some more work with the cave right now to determine if there's other antiquities and so forth in the cave. There's lots of really cool stuff that happens in Utah, and obviously not hardly anybody hears about it. You haven't seen it in a book. I don't know if you ever will. How
big is that canyon?
That's about the size of an ostrich egg on a rock. Just a stone, like a river stone. And this doesn't give it justice when you can see it good. And I've got some better pictures if all my machinery hadn't given me so much grief and I lost my presentations. I've got pictures of the back and that, which is just a regular river rock and that. But this thing is about the quality of something you'd expect to see in the Louvre or something like that, just painted on a river rock. Very interesting piece of antiquity. I can't tell you those kind of things on any of this stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know who owns it. I know who had access to it when I saw it, but I can't even give you that information. That's not for me to give. So this particular one, let's see. I probably wonder if I brought my laser. Probably didn't. Okay, let me get up this close. I can't see. This is a private drive. Right parallel to it here is county road. This road, if you came past me this way, you'd go right along the south edge of the main runways for Hillfield. So some of you might know where I'm talking about. If you go up here just about a block past where we're at, you either go right and head up towards Farmington and that, or you go left and head towards South Weber and South Ogden and so forth. That canyon right here, about a half mile up that canyon, is one of 3 places that I know of within about a 5-mile radius there that has ancient Egyptian writing. Okay, one's up by North Ogden Divide, one's just barely on the Davis County side from Smith Creek, which isn't too far from this location, but up by the top. And then this location here has just been found recently. This location, it's on a great big boulder that apparently broke off a cliff and fell down. There's a trail that goes between the cliff and the boulder that's laying there, and the hieroglyphics are on the boulder. The one up in North Ogden Divide was found a couple of years ago by a Boy Scout group taking a hike, parked in the parking lot at North Ogden Divide, hiked off, and when they got tired and thirsty, they stopped to rest. One of the scout masters was hiking around and found a stone box with Egyptian hieroglyphics carved on it. And then the one up at the top of Smith Creek includes a structure. There's a foundation and so forth. It's very low in the thick brush, so very hard to find. and it's got steps and different things inside the structure, but it's got a stone that looks similar to a big headstone or something like that with Egyptian hieroglyphics inside the structure that's been found. And so another group of people. I just heard in the last week, I've got about maybe 20 news stories in the last week to 2 weeks from different people. Heard from 2 different people, and we'll probably show you down towards Centerville in the last few years, there's been a few hundred ancient coins that date back to about 200 BC that have been found, along with other treasures, swords, brooches, large crystals, different things. Now they've just found south of Salt Lake, coming this way but not this far, they found about 20,000 more coins that date to about 200 BC just recently, right at about the Bonneville lake level, the shoreline level.
This is to lake level?
What's that?
This at lake level also?
This thing?
Yes.
That I couldn't tell you. I've seen photographs of this, but I haven't hiked up to it yet because the photographs we just saw for the first time last fall, or just recently. And I haven't had a chance to try to hike up there and locate it myself and do some heavy-duty photography work on this particular one. But one thing we know for sure, and then I also heard another story just yesterday, I guess it was, in the Manti area, and I've taken tours. I take tours of people down the Manti area, and there's hundreds of things to see down there that date back to about the time of Christ. And I'll take 2-day tours of people and stuff and take them down there and show them stuff. And we only look at a small portion of what I know about down in the Manti area. But I just found out yesterday from somebody that there's an ancient quarry that I didn't know about that has some of the stones still there that have been cut out for buildings. And one of them has Zeus carved in it, 3-dimensional, like a Greek carving, and that right in the stone itself. And that I find out things like that on a regular basis. Sometimes talking to people, when I leave my office and come back, I'll find CDs on my desk with no name on them and that, pictures and that. Sometimes there's written information. Sometimes people come in and talk to me. They leave books on my desk and different publications, writing, and so forth. And a lot of it I don't know who they come from. They just show up in my office and those kind of things. But I've got pretty good rapport with federal government. We talk to BLM, we talk to the Park Service and so forth, and we trade information. And a lot of times they'll, like when we'll go drive all the way down to St. George, I live up in the Ogden area, drive all the way down to look at a new site and photograph it, and we'll get down there and they'll have those signs where you can't step off the asphalt because you're going to wipe out all the plants in the entire world, you know, kind of thing. And they say you can't hike, you can't get off the road or anything. And so then I'll go in upset, tell them, hey, I drove all the way down from Ogden to take some pictures, and now your signs say I can't step off the road. And they'll say, well, we're not going to let you go in there, but we'll tell you some secret places where you can go in and photograph instead. So they'll share some sites with me, and they'll say, don't stay in there very long, just half hour or something, come back out. And so they'll let us go in. And then while I'm in photographing and come back out, I'll find some rare pottery or something like that, and I'll go tell them, and it makes them mad because they don't have enough money in their coffers for the state archaeologists and so forth to look at some of this stuff. And so when you give it to them, it just increases their workload that they already can't do, and so they get upset at you. But anyway, let's continue on. This was kind of an interesting guy. Real quick story. I just a couple of months ago got to see this guy and a bunch of other pieces, and the guy who collected this, it was on a shoreline that was being washed, and he said you walked along and you could pick up arms and legs and body pieces and everything all along. And he says he walked down the beach quite a ways from where he picked this up, and I believe this was the one that did not have this leg here on it, and he pulled another leg out, put it up on it, and just snapped it together like it was a tinker toy or something that snapped together and stayed there. No glue, nothing. It was built to have pieces popped together on them and so forth. By the way, these were not found in Utah, but I just drew one or two pictures we had hundreds of pieces, but we were looking at. A lot of you know what that is? Do you know what that is? That's goldcite. And so it depends on how much you're into that story of the lost Josephine up above Camas. I've seen some of these pieces that are polished and ready to go on bolo ties or something have sold for over $10,000 a piece. One of a kind. There's no place else in the world where goldcite exists. And they look quite nice. I don't know that I'd pay $10,000 for that. I know I went for bolo tie because I don't like bolo ties, but and that gets to be kind of interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about Lost Josephine mine because I know of at least 3 Lost Josephine mines in the state of Utah. And there's probably a lot more than that just in the state of Utah. The way they got their name, Lost Josephine, was it was real popular. If you were Spaniard, you found a good mine, you named it after the Queen of Spain. And so when the Queen of Spain was named Josephine, every Spaniard out there found something and named it Lost Josephine, or it's a Josephine mine, and now if it's lost, we got tons of them all over the place. So we'll talk about at least one other one here in the state of Utah that I know quite a bit about. And all right, let's see. Oh, by the way, this the big chunk there is 8 pounds, and that was appraised at $197,000. That's goldcite. I was going to ask him if I could give him $10 and take it home and put it in my rock garden before he said how much it was appraised at. I didn't figure he was going to sell it to me for 20 bucks, so I didn't even bother to ask. But okay, that you can't see real good, but and you won't be able to see it great this way either because it's in a little container, but I'm going to pass it around. This is the first one. Please don't put it in your pocket. In fact, I'll pass a couple, 2 or 3 around, and you can look at it. This one's kind of interesting. I did want to tell the story, and this is one that you don't have to turn off your projectors for that. This coin and 5 others that were all different mean a lot to me. There's not much value in the coin. The coins date back in the 1500s. The reason it means a lot to me because I found these coins in 1963 in Mazer, Utah. Anybody know where Mazer is? It's just outside of Vernal. Okay, me and a friend, I was in 3rd grade, and me and a friend were playing, he was actually a year older than me, we were playing 3rd and 4th grade games. We were playing tag, you're it, and you turn around and run, and hopefully he can catch you and tag you, and now you're it. And I was chasing my friend, and he jumped down in a big irrigation ditch. It was too big to jump over. We jumped over a smaller one above it, came down to that one, and you had to jump in the bottom. It was dry, there's no water in it, and jump out on the other side. He jumped down in the ditch and found a coin down in the ditch. So we got down there looking around, and before it was all over, we dug out of the ditch bank 21 coins. I got 6, he got the rest of the 21 coins. He had a couple of silver coins, which were in pretty nice shape. These are bronze or brass or something, and they're not in good shape, to say the least. You could see different things on different coins. Some you could see things better than others. Some were worn a lot more than others. But we could pull off dates and so forth off some of the coins and got them back into the 1500s and that. They were not Spanish coins. I got by far the best piece because I got 6 coins. There was a lot of buckles. There's a lot of buckles and a lot of bones. And of course, being in 3rd grade, we couldn't have cared less about the buckles or the bones, either one. We didn't have a metal detector, didn't know anything about them. So we dug around the ditch bank. When we didn't real quickly find some coins, we were done. And and so we left all the buckles and all the bones. I'd love to go back. I can walk you right to the spot exactly. But the problem is it was in an irrigation ditch alongside a state highway, which has been widened now, and there's asphalt over the top of it on a state road. But what I did find, besides my 6 coins, is I found a gold medal that was about that high out of solid gold and about that wide. And it was depicting the birth of Christ. It had a manger on it and so forth. And for the star over the manger, it had a ruby inlaid in it. It had an inscription on the back, which we did get translated, and it was first place in a speech contest. That was the prize for the first place winner in a speech contest. It had a hole in the top, put a ribbon or something and hang it around your neck and so forth. My parents took it away from me as soon as I got home as a 3rd grader. I said, hey, look what I found. Found a treasure up there. And we had 2 safes in the house, and they said, we're going to put this in safe. When you get old enough to know what to do with it, you can have it back. So when I got going to BYU, I thought I was old enough to know what to do with it. I said, Mom, I want my coins and my gold medal back. She says, what are you talking about? She couldn't even remember the story at all or anything about it. So we went and opened the safes, dug through the safes, not in there, nothing in there. I found this coin and one of the other 6 coins in one of her junk drawers. That's all I found so far. Don't know if I'll ever recover the other 4 coins. And of course, the gold medal, very valuable. Gold doesn't corrode. These things do. They've been buried in the ground for hundreds of years. But so hopefully at some point in time, my mother's dead now and that, but I've got a sister still living in her house, and she's still got some of the junk drawers and different things. I'm hoping that we find the coins and my gold medal. But real quick, I'll tell you another one. We'll get past it around 2. This is well, I'll read it to you. 1881 Carson City counterfeit silver dollar, found at Terrace, Utah. You know where Terrace, Utah is? One of the ghost towns up at the north end of the Great Salt Lake, where the railroad used to go around before they did the Lutheran cutoff and came across the lake. Okay, the railroad used to go around. And so it says it was found July 12th, 1968 at the main city public restroom 8 feet down. The privy hadn't been used for about 50 years, so somebody digging out all that good stuff in the privy that was the public privy, and 8 feet down they found about 68 of these. This is the only one of the counterfeit coins that was flawed, and when I pass around you'll see the flaws. The rest were perfect front and back. You couldn't tell the difference from those in a real silver dollar. If you took a real silver dollar and this one and you threw them down on a table at the same time, it's real easy to tell, because one of them sounds like you threw a bag of flour on the table and the other one makes a little ding, 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 ding sound like that. So another one, of course, it was a number of years ago, but these things are out there. I hear stuff like this found all the time. People give up and think everything's found and all these different things, and it's not so. There's things found pretty much every day out there. Okay, you know what that is, anybody? You have any coin people in here? It's not all that old. Can you read the date on there? 1933. People will argue, the coin people, not whether or not this is true, but a lot of stuff to probably back up. This is the most rare coin in the world. Or excuse me, well, it probably is the most rare, but also the most valuable coin in the world. Have any idea why that would be so valuable? There was thousands of them minted.
The government confiscated them.
The government, they hadn't been shipped out yet. They'd made them all up and the war started, and they called them all back in and melted them all down. And so there was, whenever they make new coins, new currency of any kind, paper or anything, they send 6, I think it is, to Smithsonian to go in the archives, and then they distribute the rest. And so they'd already sent the 6 out to Smithsonian or whatever. Somebody stole about 10 of them, they figure. And they destroyed the rest of them. They're illegal to have. If you were to find one out there, you would potentially go to prison. They would confiscate it and destroy it if they know you have it. The reason that there's one out there that is legal, and the way it became legal was it was during the war. Big coin collector over in Germany, I think it was, like a king or something. I don't know what you call him, but Anyway, he got wind of this coin. He wanted it. You couldn't send any gold out of the country during the war of any amount without approval from the federal government. So they did the paperwork, and they come in front of some guy that's signing off to have thousands of tanks shipped here and guns shipped there and troops shipped over there. And when it came in front of him with another 100,000 papers, he was just signing them as fast as he could. Signed the paper for him, and it made that one coin legal. It sold at auction for over $6 million for that one coin. Any of the other ones that are found are still illegal and would be confiscated and destroyed. And all of you know what that is. Do all of you know about the auction that took place this last summer with the Mormon gold coins? They had an auction. Somebody had a full set, which would be a $1, a $2.50, a $5, a $10, and a $20. And they had an auction. It sold them not as a set, but individually. The $10 Mormon gold piece sold for over $750,000. Did we already send around one of them?
Yeah, I think so.
We'll send one of these around. And by the way, Hall Brothers back here, this is one of their mint pieces that I was given some time ago. Appreciate that. But most people have seen this one. But there's a single, I think it's a $20 gold piece that had a lion on it. And most people aren't even aware that even existed. So this one, when you see it, this was a bicentennial stamp celebrating the bicentennial. And it'll show you what the lion, which you never see when they show them. They nearly always show the all-seeing eye and those kinds of things. But we're getting close probably to the time we need to shift gears. I'm going to tell you at least one more quick story and pass this around. Anybody know what those are called? Finger bar. Okay, everybody dreams of finding the Spanish gold in the great big chunks and that, and we'll tell you some stories here once all the recorders go off about some of the big ones that are so big that one man can't even move it, not slide it, not do anything. I mean, there's some big ones here in Utah, but these were the most common. That's called a finger bar because you'd go to a sandbar, you'd push your finger down in, and that's your mold for the gold. And they would do these, and they'd do what's called buttons. And a button is simply pouring the gold out and making a little round spot. Just pour it out on the ground or whatever your mold material was, make a little spot. It's called a button. The reason they like to do these, a lot of different reasons. First of all, you got to have a lot of gold to pour a big bar, number one. But when you load your donkeys up to take them back south and that, they'd about kill the donkeys loading them up and that. And if you want to balance them, get a load that each individual donkey can carry and balance side to side in the packs. This kind of thing in the little buttons, way easier to balance, move back and forth on your packs and so forth, and deal with than a bar that you can't carry, or neither can the donkey kind of thing. So I'll pass that one around and I'll tell you the story on that one. A number of years ago, 3 guys in the Duchesne area had a map or something, and they dug up several hundred of these finger bars. This bar that's going around is the smallest finger bar of the group, okay? The smallest one of the group. And they got a bunch of buttons and they got a bunch of finger bars. They announced they had them and they were for sale. Took about 2 days to sell about $1 million worth of them. Everybody got them, threw them in their safety deposit box. By the way, you'll notice that as it comes around that this finger bar doesn't have any markings on it, which would mean it was contraband. It's if it was legal tender with the Spaniards, it would have assay marks. It would have telling how pure, that somebody had assayed it, how pure the metal was, who the miner was, who owned the mine. It would show that the royal fifth had been paid to the King of Spain. It would show there's all kinds of different stamps that go in what would be considered a legal Spanish bar. They figured there was a lot more contraband. Of course, you could lose your life or anything else if they found out you're taking out all that money without paying the Royal Fifth and all those kind of things. But anyway, so you can legally own a bar like this with no markings on it. You can't legally own if there's markings on it. Now it falls under the Antiquities Act, and it belongs to the government. And so as far as finding yourself a treasure, this is the best way to find it. The antiquity bars are worth a lot more money, of course, because they have antiquity value, more than just the gold value. But you could own a bar like that with no markings on it. So anyway, they sold all these bars out. Everybody grabbed them up. Some people bought quite a few of them, threw them in their safety deposit box. Everybody was happy as could be with their treasures that they now own. And a guy that I worked with, his father and his grandfather had bought several of them. And by the way, his grandfather, some of you might have his book, J.C. Wilkinson, as his grandfather. He's written a couple of books on sacred Rhodes mine and so forth. And anyway, they'd bought a number of bars, and so the guy I worked with, who was the grandson of J.C. Wilkinson, he says, Dad, he says, you want me to tell you how good your bar is, your gold bar, what the percentage of gold is in it? Because, you know, smelling it up here in the mountains before they take it back and refine it and that, you're lucky to get 80% or, you know, different things like that. And you'll get copper and you'll get silver and all kinds of other things in the bar. He says, you want to know how much gold's in there? And he says, my father-in-law works for a military contractor there in Ogden, and they have a spectral analysis machine. Now normally it costs you $600 to $1,000. I think it's gone down quite a bit now, but back then it would be $600 to $1,000 to test that bar. Well, if you paid $1,000 for it, not too many people are going to pay $1,000 to see how good it is. But he says, I can get it done for you for free. And he says, yeah, I want that done. So he gave him this bar that's passing around. This is the bar out of the $1 million worth of gold that was sold. And it was taken down to have a spectral analysis run on it. When you put that in the machine, it gives you a printout, and it will, big long printout, and it'll tell you every mineral, everything in there, every kind of silver and copper and everything else. It'll tell you the exact percentage in that bar of what everything is. So it starts spitting out all these numbers. It gets to gold, and it says that the amount of gold, the percentage of gold in that bar is 0.000187 or something to that effect. You probably get more gold out of a glass of water. All right, so it's what these guys had done, and they had a great scam going. They bought a real gold bar, finger bar, and then they drilled a hole in it, and they collected all the filings and that from drilling the hole, and they took the bar and the filings. They went to a reputable assay shop in Salt Lake. They gave them the gold and the filings, and they says, check this out. They ran an assay on it, and they wrote them a authenticated letter. This is an authentic gold bar. This is the percentages of gold, so forth. Gave that back to them, and they took it to another person here in the state who was well known and liked by people, and he looked at the assay sheet, and he looked at the gold bar and everything, and he wrote them a letter of authenticity and said, yeah, this is legitimate stuff. Then they took that and they used that to sell everybody their bars. Oh, and they also wanted to make sure their bars looked really good. So they did the finger molds, and they poured copper in there, and then when they got it figured out so they got them looking good, then they gold plated them. Gold plating, of course, about 1/millionth of an inch thick. So what you're seeing and handling there is real gold. There just isn't enough to buy a cup of coffee or anything on there. But and so then they sold everybody these gold bars. That bar that you're handling sent 3 guys to prison for quite a few years on a scam. And I'm sure there's quite a few guys in Utah that still have a bunch of these in a safety deposit box that think they're rich. And they probably got it in their wills that for their kids to inherit them and everything, and they're not worth anything. I had the bar doing lectures and that with it for about a year and a half or so, and then the family wanted it back. I offered to give them $20, and they says, $20? We spent $1,000 on that thing. Says, yeah, but that's when it was worth $1,000. Now it's only worth about 10 cents. So. And they wouldn't sell it to me, and then just at Christmas time they called me and said, if you want that, we'll sell it to you. And they come down, and then they didn't even sell it to me. They left it on my desk and left, and I sent them an email and says, where should I send the money? And they said, just a Christmas present. So I got that for a Christmas present this year. But All right, let's see if there's anything else we need to look at, and then, oh, here's the back side of a, oh, and I do have to tell you one more story. Some of these are good stories, whether they're the best one or not. And this, by the way, is, and that's a poor picture, but the picture's taken like in 1927, and it's not a lot better than that, the original photograph. That's some Indian petroglyphs up north of Ogden, that on private property. And it's really hard to get in there and see that. This is actually was shot back in like 1927. I'm trying to make arrangements to get in and see some of these panels. These are fantastic panels, but nobody gets to see them because to tell you who the private property owner is, it's Thykal, so they don't particularly care who you are or anything else, but I do have some connections, and I'm hoping to be able to get in there and look at those. But anyway, so digitally I had hundreds of photos to show you. Basically that's the end of it, because as some of you know, I had my program that I set up and was putting pictures on crashed on me about 6 times in the last week, and I totally lost everything, and I had a whole bunch. So for the rest of this, you're going to have to close your eyes probably and envision some of the things I tell you. I will show you a few stills and so forth. But I did want to tell you one more story since we were talking about Mormon gold pieces. Everybody familiar with Barnes Bank and know what happened to Barnes Bank? Probably most of you don't really know what happened to Barnes Bank, other than you know they don't exist anymore. Here about 6-7 years ago, when the economy went south, Barnes Bank folded their doors, and they've been around since Brigham Young. They were actually solvent bank, more so than most all the other banks, but a political move by the federal government. They wanted them closed, and so they were forced into closure, and they went out of business. And so when they were going out of business, they of course they're going to close their doors, so they contact all the people that are dealing with them, and they says, you know, you've got a safety deposit box in our bank. On this day, we're closing the doors forever. You have to come in and get everything out of your safety deposit boxes and so forth. And they notified everybody. Well, there's so many safety deposit boxes and so much valuable stuff that they contact police, sheriff's department, highway patrol, and they have people down there in the lobbies and so forth, protecting people as they come in and empty safety deposit boxes to take an open account in another bank or whatever. And so a friend of mine was hired by a highway patrolman to come and replace his hot water heater. This is up towards the north side of the Great Salt Lake. And so he gets up there and he's replacing the hot water heater, and the highway patrolman comes down, he watches him a little bit and that, and he goes, "Hey, I've got a good story for you." He says, just last week, he says, I got called up to go down to Barnes Bank to just, you know, help watch so that there weren't robberies taking place while they're emptying all these safety deposit boxes and everything. He says, this little old lady in her 90s comes walking in and walks down there and says, I need to get my stuff out of your bank, I guess, and here's my key. So they go down, and she's got the biggest safety deposit box in the bank. They go up and turn the locks and everything, and the guy tries to pull the thing out, and he can't budge it. And he gets another guy to help him, and the two of them can't budge it. And they call for this highway patrolman and they get about 3 or 4 people on it, and they get this thing pulled out, take it over and throw it up on the counter. And then they kind of back off to give her privacy and that. But one of the guys says, well, it's really none of our business, but if you don't mind, what have you got in that thing? And she says, oh, you can see, and she opens it up, and they come and look, and it's full of gold bars and gold coins, and the whole thing's gold, but it's, you know, typical of what a lot of collectors and that might have, or people who think the end of the world's coming and want to put some gold away and silver and so forth. That kind of stuff. But the real killer on the thing, aside from there being a lot of gold in there, there was gold dust and gold flakes and gold nuggets, anything you imagine in gold, but it was all gold in there. There was 2 rolls of Mormon gold coins in there. And he says they got those big canvas bank bags, and they loaded up about 4 bank bags full of gold, and they took them out for her and put them in the back of her car, and she got in her car and drove down the road. I got after him. I says, how come you didn't get a name? See if she was adopting somebody, you know. But
Is she married?
if she isn't, she ought to be. I know a few people who have Mormon gold coins. In fact, last winter, I was asked to come and do a presentation, historical presentation on Utah to a little group of widows, little older women, widows. There was about 10 of them or so, and it was at a house in West Point. And I went down and gave the presentation, and I was talking about and passing around. I've got 2 or 3 Mormon gold coins. They're as near as we can tell, and I've taken them to some people, and they can't tell me for sure on some of them so far, but they could easy enough by weighing them and that. But as near as we can tell, 2 of them are fakes, 3 of them are fakes, and 1 they can't tell for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's faker. I don't know which one I'm passing around. Maybe I'm passing around the real one for you to look at, but I think all of mine are just replicas, probably. But I passed one around in that, and the lady whose house we were at, and she's in her 90s, and she says, "I got one of those." And I says, "Yeah, really? Where's it at?" I figured she'd say in her safe deposit box. So I throw it in with my silverware and stuff, you know, in the drawer. And I'm going, okay. This is about the time that had the auction, and one sold for $750,000. And I thought, I don't know if I'd throw that in my silverware drawer. Her sister is the one that invited me, and her sister takes care of the older sister. And I asked her later, I says, do you think, you know, she had all these women there and that, and I says, you know, on another day or another night, do you think we could go back and I could photograph her coin? Because I photographed a few from other people that I know. And she says, no. And it kind of surprised me, because I figured it'd be no big deal, especially if you throw it in your silverware drawer. And I says, why do you think we can't do that? And she says, because I'm her sister and she won't even let me see it. She got that from Mom, and she won't let any of the rest of the family see it. So I haven't seen it, but I know she has it, and I have seen from other people. Now, I was going to tell you, just kind of to give you an idea of some numbers, I've got about 10 of these diaries full of stories. One-of-a-kind stories from people that have died and so forth on a lot of stuff. I'll show you a couple other things, and then we'll get into some of these better stories here in a second. I have some other binders around, but this is another thing I do in my research and so forth, is I've got 3-ring binders that are full of photographs and documentation. And again, some of this stuff is things that have been left on my desk. I don't even have any idea where these things are. They'll just come in and leave a CD on my desk or DVD. And sometimes there'll be information, sometimes there'll be GPS coordinates, all kinds of things. A lot of it's my own research, but for research purposes, I try to get pictures on things that I'm working on. We talked about giants. I guess we ought to talk about that. I'll try to take out things I don't care if you're recording. Giants has been one of my favorite things to study for quite a few years, and there's lots and lots of information out there on giants. You can't find a lot in books, and for those of you who love to talk about government conspiracies and cover-ups, this is one of the biggest ones there is out there, although we're starting to break the shell. I understand that Smithsonian's starting to finally fess up to a few things because of the internet. It's getting too hard to keep things covered up. But you can find lots and lots and lots of newspaper articles dating back from the 1800s and so forth coming forward, where a lot of giants and so forth. Ohio River Valley is where a vast majority of them in the United States are found, and they find thousands of them, literally. I've got information on one graveyard where they've identified over 3,000 giants in one graveyard, and I have the coordinates and so forth. But a lot of these things get turned over to Smithsonian, and then nobody ever hears of them again. And if you go and ask them, they say, we don't know what you're talking about. This is, to me, is the best. There's a lot of books out there, actually, that you can find. This one's got tape on it, but it's called Genesis 6, Giants, Master Builders of... I got to look in here. Master Builders of the Prehistoric and Ancient Civilization. It's not cheap. you get on Amazon and that, and you're going to pay probably $50 or more for that. But probably the best one that I found on it. But to give you an idea, and I wish I could show you this on overhead, but these are showing, and they tell you the documentation where you can find information on these skeletons. But this little guy right here, if you can see him, right here, that's 6 foot tall. These are to scale, these giants that have been found. This is a 6 foot tall guy right here. Now I'd like to see, I've got photos and that of them up to about 10 foot tall. Let me show you a 10 foot tall guy. And I'll tell you what, you put a tape measure up a wall or something and try to 10 feet and try to imagine a guy there that's about 10 feet tall. This guy right here is 9 feet tall. And this one's 13 feet tall. This one over here, the big guy, 36 feet tall. If you could find something like that, I definitely want to be your buddy and I want to photograph him. Yeah, we'll put it under here. Anyway, one of the things I want to tell you about on giants that I chased, I've got a whole drawer full of pictures of some specific giants. Here in the United States, they found several in Florida, and we've actually found several here in Utah and found several over in Nevada. Those are the 3 states that I know of. There's probably more than that, but those are the ones I'm aware of. I've done quite a bit of research on the ones in Nevada, and I've got some photographs of some of the ones here in Utah. In Nevada, Lovelock Cave, if you know where Lovelock, Nevada is, out in beautiful Nevada. The city Lovelock, if you go kind of over on the west edge and then you go about 8 miles south into the desert, there's what's called Lovelock Cave out there. And there's quite a story that goes with it, and they vary some, but they're pretty close. But basically what ended up happening is, in doing a bunch of research, the Indians, and I think they're Paiutes, could be wrong on that, but the Indians that are still alive today started telling these archaeologists, as they're telling the history of their tribe, that there used to be tribes up to the north that were cannibals and they were giants, and they would come down and round up the Indians and take them back and eat them. And of course they didn't look too kindly on that, and they were terrified by it. They were giants. They'd come down, whenever they saw them, they knew they were down to collect some bodies to take back and eat. And so one day one of the men in the tribe was out hunting, and he runs across a few of them, and they're living in Lovelock Cave, or they're staying there in Lovelock Cave. And so he goes back to his tribe and he says, "Hey, there's a group of them down here, and I know where they're at." And so the whole tribe picks up, and instead of running, they go up to where these guys are. They drive them back into the cave, and stoning them and so forth, and basically bury them up inside the cave. And so anyway, over the years, the bats get in there and everything, and all the bat guano and that falls on them, and it mummifies them. And so they still have skin on them, they've still got hair on them and so forth. And then finally, moved to modern day, and you had people go in there several years ago. Bat guano was a huge thing. If you could find enough, it probably still would be today, but probably EPA and everybody would keep you from mining it. But it was great fertilizer. And so you got somebody in there mining out all this bat guano, and they come across and they dig out these Indian mummies that are giants. They're 10 foot tall, and they've got red hair, they've got double rows of teeth, and they have 6 digits on each hand and on each foot. And I've had people tell me, well, I've heard a lot of BS stories before, but that's one of the better ones I've heard, 6 fingers on each hand, each foot. And I said, well, John Slaw went to school with me. We went to high school together. All his kids had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. And I know other people that have had the same thing in their family. Double rows of teeth. I had double rows of teeth when I was in junior high. I can't even tell you how many times they sent me to the dentist to pull out as many teeth as I could stand at a time, because I had so many extra sets of teeth. And I says, that's a genetic thing. It's not that big of a deal. Red hair obviously isn't that big of a deal. Down in Florida, guess what? The giants have red hair, double rows of teeth, 6 digits on each appendage and that. And so anyway, so they found these, and I've done quite a bit of research on it, and I found, I think, something like 37 legal archaeology digs. at Lovelock Cave. Probably 5 times that many illegal ones. Anyway, a lot of the bones and different artifacts that were taken out went to some of the universities which were doing the digs out of California. However, Winnemucca, the big city of Winnemucca, got some of the stuff, and I've got a whole drawer full of photographs that different people have taken. At one time they had them out where you could see them, and then when they passed the laws that you couldn't show the human remains anymore, they went in the back room. Well, if you knew they were there, you could go sweet talk some of the museum curators, go back in the back, and they'd let you photograph the skulls at least, and they had like 3 skulls. Oh, and by the way, you read the stories, and is what was a favorite thing to do in the 1800s when they'd get into these, is you take the skull like it's a motorcycle helmet and you put it on over your head. These things are huge. And so I've got quite a few photos taken from different people in Winnemucca of these skulls, and they always put a mold of a normal jaw size next to them, and they're just dwarf, very small. They'll put quarters out on the countertop or whatever. Anyway, it was always one of my big deals. I was going to go photograph these. And one of the guys that works for KSL right now, he's one of their head TV guys, cameraman, started doing a thesis on giants. Now, it's the second one that I know of. I read part of a thesis of a guy back east that was doing his research around the Ohio Valley, and he had a ton of good stuff. But this guy here with KSL was doing one, and so he went over to photograph him. He was going to video him because he's a cameraman, and he's doing a video thesis. And so he goes over and he says, "I want to see your stuff. I'm doing this video thesis." And they said, "Absolutely not." They says, 2 weeks ago the federal government came in here, told us if we ever showed those to anybody again, we're all going to prison for the rest of our life. They're shutting down the museum. They're going to quarter and draw us with horses. I mean, they'd really read them the riot act. You don't show them to anybody. And he says, "Well, you don't understand. I'm not local Joe from the bar wanting to see them or that. I'm doing a thesis on this, scientific thesis." Says, "We were told nobody gets to see them." And he says, "I want to appeal to your board of directors and that." So they assembled the museum board, and he went in and presented his case, and they said, "Absolutely not." Okay, that's been a couple of years ago. So here about a year ago, and by the way, every year I say, well, this summer that's real high on my bucket list. I'm going over there. And then I found out from him that they wouldn't let anybody see him anymore, and I was heartbroken, but I thought, well, if I go over and talk to him, maybe they'll at least verbally give me some information that's interesting. So here about a year ago, has it been that long since we went over? About a year ago, we went over to Winnemucca to the museum, and we walked in, and there was nobody else in the museum except curators, and there was 2 women in the back room or something, and one of them immediately came out, and she starts saying, "Oh, we got a car collection over here, and we got this," and I says, whoa, wait a minute. I says, "I want some information on your giants." She says, "I don't even know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? There's no such thing as giants." And we started into this conversation, and the more I'd talk to her, I think she thought I'd just come from the bar, or heard it from somebody at the bar or something, and I'd start telling things about the history and everything, and when she saw I knew something, then she'd change her story and she'd add a little bit to it, but well, it wasn't really giants. They were taller than, the regular Indian was 5'4", and they had a couple of skeletons that were 6 foot tall. And then I'd talk to her some more, and her story would change again. And after it changed a number of times, she finally got fed up with talking to me and figured I knew too much and that. So she walked over to a little school desk type thing, and she opened the top, and there was about a ream of paper of individual sheets, and she pulled one off the top and came over and says, "Here." And she turned around and walked away and went back in the office. So I read the paper, and it was a pre-printed thing that they were told by the federal government what to give you this big baloney story about there's no such thing as giants and stuff, and that was it. A year ago over to Winnemucca. But and I may have some still photos in here of some of the giants before we get out of here. If I do, I'll show them to you. Let's thumb through them a little bit. Another thing that, and again, I was going to show you some photos. Up in Morgan, they found a Spencer rifle over on East Canyon Creek, down below East Canyon Reservoir. A family was rototilling their garden and turned up this rifle that was buried there. All the wood was gone and that, it was just the corroded metal part and everything. And Anyway, the family gave me the rifle. I had it for about a year and a half. They didn't give it to me. They let me take it for about a year, and I did a ton of research on it. First repeating rifle invented, very first one. People argue that the Henry was the first one, but there's plenty of evidence that the Henry was just months after this one. This is the one that really, and you never see this on TV, it's what changed the Civil War. It came out about the start of the Civil War, but the government was too skeptical to buy them because they were afraid if their supply of bullets, oh, and by the way, the rifle was invented before the bullet was invented. So they had a repeating rifle, but no bullets to shoot in it. They had to invent those a little later on so the rifle was even usable. And it's kind of interesting because you can see the screws, which are pretty interesting in that. And they were all made by hand. The reason I know that in my research is because after the company went bankrupt after the war and the guy lost it, he invented the very first machine that made screws. So everything in this rifle, all the screws in it were handmade. There was no such thing as a machine that would make screws. But it would hold 7 bullets, and they'd come in a tube, and through the butt of the gun you would put that tube in, and then you would cock it, and then the rest of the mechanism was the old flintlock mechanism. You'd pull back the big hammer and all that kind of stuff. But when halfway through the Civil War, when they decided that the soldiers, the northern people would purchase these, and they started ordering them from them. And I've got a bunch of diary pieces from generals and that from the South, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They'd have these things like you see where they've got the picket fences or whatever you call them, and there's an open field, and they're behind the fences shooting back and forth, and they're still using black powder. That's all they've got for the bullets, and so they can shoot about nearly 10 rounds to 1 round of the rebels halfway through the Civil War. And they'd shoot so much that then everybody would have to quit shooting for a while to let the smoke clear because you couldn't see anything, and then they could start shooting at each other again. But the generals would pick somebody out because they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they'd send word down the line that say, you see that guy over there? I want everybody to aim at him and kill him. And so that poor guy's just dead meat because he'd have 50 guys shooting at him or something. And they'd shoot him, and then he'd send 3 or 4 runners over there. Half of them would get killed, drag him back. We want to see what's going on. We don't understand what's going on here. They'd drag him back and they'd see what the rifle was, but there wasn't anything they could do because they don't have any bullets. They couldn't use the weapons anyway. But there was 4 models made. Halfway cocked was safety. All the way cocked, you're ready to fire. Holds 7 bullets. The one that was dug up there was in the fully cocked position. Now, what that tells me is he was in a gun battle and got killed right there. I was trying to get somebody to do enough metal x-rays on it because there's 2 serial numbers on it. I know where those are at. And every one was issued with the serial number to a name, and you can still get hold of that list. And I figured if I can get somebody to x-ray and get me a number that I could read, we could go back and find out who owned the rifle. We could, through genealogy source and that, contact the family. More than likely he was coming back. Oh, and by the way, at the end of the Civil War, you either, I think you had to pay $10 to keep your rifle or you had to turn it in. Most people kept their rifles, and that's what made the guy go bankrupt. Everybody that wanted a rifle had one when the war got over. And so they couldn't sell any. They tried to make some change to that. Nobody wanted a rifle. I've already got one. They went bankrupt. And so all their patents and everything, I think, were sold to Winchester or somebody. But anyway, so I thought, boy, it'd be real interesting to contact the family. If they have family history, they'll probably tell you he got released from the Civil War from the Army. He was okay. He was happy. He was heading home, and then he disappeared. Nobody ever heard of him. And I could tell him, I know where his bones probably are. He was in some kind of battle with Indians or outlaws or something, and halfway through the battle, and of course x-raying him, we could have told how many bullets were still unfired inside the gun and so forth. Couldn't ever get anybody to do it, so finally I ended up giving it back to the family. But this is part of my research just on the rifle, and I've got stacks and stacks of research on it, but very interesting thing. Now we got to hurry to get into some of these stories. This, talking about maps, this is another one that I've made from information I've collected. This is out in the Drum Mountain area, and some old sheep herders found some ancient writing out there. 5 boulders in a circle with a bunch of ancient writing on all of the 5 boulders. We've gone out a number of times trying to find it, and every time we go out, I come back and go to the family again and say, well, this is what we found, this is where we're at. And they go, oh, you're really close, you just need to go another 100 yards. So I think we're to the point now where we can probably go up and find it. I haven't seen it yet, but let's see. We'll skip a ton of this stuff so that, like I say, I've got hundreds and hundreds of stories. I'm just trying to pull a few pretty good ones out for you to hear. Just because I know everybody gets tired of reading their books and everything, and you read the same story over and over and over, and everybody thinks that's all there is, and it's not true. There's tons of stuff out there, new stuff. Here's another map. So these are the kind of things, I've got drawers full of this kind of stuff. This is another map that's given to me by a guy who's dead now. And they're not too hard to read. Can you make out stuff on there pretty easy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so when they're modern day map and that, they're pretty easy to read. He's even given me GPS coordinates and that on it. And what this is this is out south of Delta, and it's real close to a county road. In fact, he was driving down the road and got a flat tire. Went to put his spare on, and his spare was flat. And so by the time he made phone calls and everything, he's out there like 4 hours before somebody comes and rescues him. And so while he's out there, he's just wandering around, you know, kicking rocks, figuring something to do for 4 hours. And he comes across all kinds of Indian petroglyphs and that, but the thing that was the most interesting to me, and he shows you the petroglyphs and everything on here, but he shows you all kinds of details. He shows you where there's railroad bridges and different things, so you know exactly where you're at. We've been out there. But he come across about a 3-acre spot that's totally covered with obsidian from making arrowheads. That had to have been like a war with 1 million people in it to make that many arrowheads. And I know a few other places in the state that are like that. And so lots and lots of ancient Indian activity out in this spot. But that's another one. Unfortunately, I have a lot of this kind of map. Now tell me where that's at.
I have no idea.
And neither do I, but I drew that. And I've got a lot of them, you know, and if people tell you, or even if they draw it and they're pointing and saying, okay, this is such and such, and this is, you know, whatever, and this is the road, and this is whatever, and you go, yeah, I understand all that stuff, and then you take it home and throw it in your drawer and you pull it out 5 years later, and you go, I wonder what the heck that was, and where it was. That's probably, I think this is probably where there's 100 tons of gold bars, but I'm not sure. But I got a lot of those, and that's unfortunate. And I've got even more where we didn't even draw a picture, and the intent was, as soon as I get home, you know, from memory, I'm gonna draw something, and so I can remember where it's at. Now, that being said, let's talk a little bit that way really quick. So far, we're going to be getting out of time, and I haven't got into the ones to turn off your... Yeah, keep going. Anyway, fairly recently, a guy by the name of Jason was building himself a new home, and by the way, my profession is I'm building official, and so I got to see him quite a bit, and as we got talking, he starts telling me that his wife, her great-great-grandpa, had run into a Spanish guy down in the Ogden area or something, and this guy had an old map, an old Spanish map, and he showed it to him. Hey, what do you think of this? Can you tell me anything of that? And he looked it over pretty good and told him what he could or whatever, and the guy says, you know, that's all she wrote, takes his map and leaves. Well, from memory, he immediately sits down, just like we're talking about, and he redraws the map from memory. And from that, he goes out and he finds the mine, and a lot of you may have heard of it. It's another one of our Lost Josephine, besides the one up above Camas. This one's over in Wellsville, or Wallsburg. Okay, Wallsburg. And so a lot of interesting stuff, and I've seen some of the photos and so forth, but this started 3 generations ago. He finds the mine, 5 entrances to the mine, to this Spanish mine. Goes way back in the 70s. I got some of the lost treasure, some of the treasure hunting magazines, and they had a really interesting several page article of that particular mine where they'd got a piece of a buffalo skull, and it had a map on it. It was circular, and it had little notches all the way around it. It might have been something to do with compass points or something. And then it had drainages carved on it, and it showed about 6 or 7 Spanish mines on this buffalo skull map. They found all kinds of other things in the mine. They've found a lot of fire pits. They've found different maps. They found buffalo skulls. They found all kinds of things in there. 3 generations they've been digging out, and they've never got to the back of any of the shafts yet. Jason told me that he's been back in over a half mile, and he says still haven't, because I asked him, I says, well, how good are the veins and stuff? Don't know. Nobody's ever got to the back of one of the shafts yet to tell. But he's been working on, in fact, I just emailed him again yesterday. His grandfather is the latest one that had the claim, and he died recently, and his step-grandmother, they have kept diaries from day one and photographs and that of everything that's happened in that mine. I asked him if there was any chance of me getting my hands on that, and he's working on that. He's been working on it for a number of months to get it from the family, and I'm hopeful to get hold of those diaries and photos and everything of that particular mine. But for them to fill those in half a mile deep, to fill them all the way in and that, they have to be, the Indians didn't bother if I can take you out to a bunch of Spanish mines that are worked out. You don't hide those, no reason to. But the ones, when you kill the Spaniards off and so forth, the ones that you got to be concerned with are if more Spaniards are going to come and enslave you again back in that same mine. If you can conceal it to the point nobody can find it, they can't work in the mine. That's why so many of them are concealed. And oftentimes you're going to find the remainder of the Spaniard bodies inside those concealed mines if you find them. The reason being that the Indians were considered as animals, but they had to be baptized. They knew what was going on. They knew that if you didn't get your last rites, you were condemned to purgatory for eternity. Worst thing that could happen to you. Well, to get even with people, what are you going to do? Well, when we kill them, we're going to throw them in there and we're going to bury it so nobody can ever find them, and they're going to be in purgatory for the rest of life, and their family's going to know they're in purgatory for the rest of life because their bones and their remains will never be found, and they'll never get the last rites. So oftentimes there is Spanish remains in these types of mines, and I could tell you if we had enough time about some of my mines I found and different things, some interesting stories. I'm going to show you a picture here real quick. Since a lot of what we're going to talk about is maps, that is bigger than real life. That's about the size of a piece of Wonder Bread. In fact, the reason it was picked up was because the 2 guys that were out arrowhead hunting, the one guy saw it laying on the ground and thought he'd pick it up and tell his buddy, hey, I found a petrified piece of Wonder Bread. So he picks it up off the ground. It was face down, and this is an Indian map. And I know it's a long ways back there. I wish I could project it. I had it on there and lost it. But there's 4 parallel lines here, which is more than likely a river. And you've got a bunch of peaks here and a bunch of peaks here. And so you've got this side of the river going up into the mountains, and you've got this side of the river going up into the mountain. And I've gone over this thing with magnifiers and everything I can to find X marks a spot or something to tell me what this map's about, and there is nothing on the map of that sort. And this is my speculation, but I think the way that this map was used by the Indians was I'd get with my buddy and I'd say, you see that mountain peak over there? That's this one here. See this cane right here? There's some really nice elk in there if you want to go up and shoot. And then if you want to get a mountain sheep, come over here right on this side. There's a bunch of them or something. I think that's how that's used, because there's nothing to show you where to go on this map. It just shows a whole bunch of mountain peaks. I have not gone back yet, but I know where this was found, and I want to go back and look around in that area, see if I can determine the river and the mountain peaks that match up with this. But again, there's nothing to show a campground. They might do that too. Go take your camp, put it right here. There's some fresh water there, that kind of thing, and you can look at that kind of go that way or something. I don't know how else that would be used, but that's a carved-in Indian map that was found down in southern Utah.
Could there be another piece of the map that would show something?
We looked at it pretty close, and I don't think so. It doesn't look like anything's broken off from it. Well, I got way too much stuff to show you guys, and we've still got some great stories to tell. Just real quick, here's some of the Roman coins and that have been found in the last couple of years. Oh, we were talking about giants. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yell at me if I'm not showing you guys. You can't see them real good there. Those are bigger than what they actually are, but and I've got quite a few photos of different groups of coins like that. This right here is one of the southern Utah giant burials, and I can tell you about different ones in the state and so forth, and they're kind of similar. This particular one is solid sandstone, 17 feet across and 47 feet deep. They dug it out of a solid piece of sandstone. This thing that you see going around here is a 11-inch wide shelf that spirals from the top all the way to the bottom. You can't walk on it or anything. It's not wide enough. Don't have any idea what the purpose was. When you go down 47 feet, get to the bottom, then you go through a little hole in the side into another chamber they dug out, and there's 3 10-foot giants in there in the burials. Another one that's down, and that's real close to the southern boundary of Utah. Down in the Kanab area a couple of years ago, they located some Indian caves, and out in front of them, in the caves there was a lot of petroglyphs and so forth, even on the roof of the cave. And out in front of them, they're again in solid sandstone, but not near as deep as this one. They dug circular holes in the sandstone. There was no spiral shelf, but it was dug in solid sandstone. They dug down, and they're again giant burials. They bury 3 giants in each one. They put them down in there in fetal position, facing to the east. They cover them with sand until the body's covered with sand. Then they put a 6-inch cap of blue clay on top of that, and then the next burial goes on top of that. Once they've got 3 burials in the hole, they fill it all the rest of the way up, and then they go to another one. But there's quite a few of them up in that particular area. Let's see, what else can we show you here real quick? We haven't got into the good stuff yet. All right.
Why haven't they taken pictures and documented these 10-foot giants in southern Utah?
They're documented, but you can't take them to the government or anybody because they quiet the whole thing up. They don't exist. It's just like, I got permission, and hopefully, because I didn't call him recently, and he said a small group, and I don't know if this is considered a small group, and I'll back up a little bit. All right, camera's off at this point. All recording off. We'll try to cover